A woman tried to publicly shame Karoline Leavitt, believing the crowd would be on her side. But reality hit her hard. Karoline Leavitt wasn't looking for attention that day. She had a list, a plan, and barely 30 minutes before her next appointment, the shopping center in Knoxville, Tennessee was packed. Mothers juggling toddlers, teens loitering near the food court, and workers in a hurry to grab lunch. She moved through the aisles of a mid-sized grocery store, selecting a few essentials: milk, bread, a few vegetables. Simple, ordinary, but nothing about the next 10 minutes would be. As she rounded the corner into the frozen food section, she heard it, a voice sharp and laced with anger. Unbelievable. People like you think they can just walk around like normal citizens. The words were loud enough to turn a few heads. Karoline barely reacted at first, assuming it was about someone else. But then, "Yeah, I'm talking to you, Karoline." She stopped. A woman stood about 10 feet away, gripping her cart so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, a loose t-shirt with a progressive slogan stretched across her chest. Her eyes were locked onto Karoline. This wasn't just some random outburst, it was personal. Karoline exhaled slowly. She had faced hostility before. Political life came with its share of confrontations. The debates, the interviews, the heated exchanges online. She was used to pushback. But in the middle of a grocery store, this was different. More people began to notice. A woman near the yogurt aisle stopped mid-reach, eyes darting between Karoline and the angry woman. A couple near the registers whispered to each other, glancing in their direction. The tension thickened. "What's the problem?" Karoline finally asked, keeping her voice level. The woman scoffed loudly. "You are the problem," she snapped. "People like you, spreading your garbage, thinking you can get away with it. You disgust me." Karoline kept her posture relaxed. No flinching, no knee-jerk reaction. If she responded with anger, the situation would spiral. She noticed the woman's hands shaking, her breathing fast, almost erratic. This wasn't just about politics. This woman was furious about something deeper. "Listen," Karoline said, keeping her voice calm. "I don't know what's upsetting you, but—" "Oh, don't pretend," the woman cut her off, stepping forward, closing the gap between them. "You and your kind, you're dangerous. You have no idea what people like me have been through because of you." More heads turned. A man near the checkout reached for his phone, holding it just low enough to stay discreet. A cashier stopped mid-scan, her eyes flicking up, waiting to see if this was going to turn into something viral. Karoline held her ground. She had been through tough interviews, brutal smear campaigns, and stage ambushes by reporters. But this was raw, unfiltered. It wasn't some pundit trying to score a debate point. It was just a woman boiling over with rage. She wasn't sure what was coming next. Would she start screaming? Would she grab her? Would security step in before things got worse? Karoline knew one thing for certain. All eyes were on her now. But this was only the beginning. The air in the store had changed. People weren't just shopping anymore. They were watching. Some stood frozen. "I understand that you're upset," Karoline said, her tone controlled, "but I'm just here to buy groceries like everyone else." That only made her angrier. "You don't get to act like this is normal," the woman's voice cut through the store. People flinched. A mother near the bakery pulled her child closer. A store employee, barely out of his teens, stood stiff behind the self-checkout, eyes darting toward the registers like he was debating whether to call someone. The woman's hands trembled as she pointed a finger. "You don't get to pretend you're just some regular person after everything you've done." A sharp silence followed. Karoline could feel it shift. The tension wasn't just between her and this woman anymore. It had spread. People in the store weren't just watching, they were feeling the weight of it too. Some nodded subtly, agreeing with the woman's anger. Others looked uncomfortable, as if realizing they had unknowingly stepped into something much bigger than a quick grocery run. Then the woman lunged forward, not a full attack, but close. Her hands didn't make contact, but they came too close, too aggressive. A foot closer, and it would have been physical. Gas rippled through the store. A man near the floral section, wearing a crisp blue button-up, stepped forward like he was ready to intervene. A woman behind Karoline muttered, "Oh, this is bad." Someone's phone definitely recorded that moment. Caroline still didn't move. She could have stepped back, raised her hands, given the crowd a reaction. But instead, she locked eyes with the woman. "I'm not afraid of you," Caroline said, her voice steady. The woman's face twisted. For a moment, it looked like she might lose control completely. Her breath hitched, her shoulders shook, and her fists clenched at her sides. Then just as quickly, doubt flickered in her eyes. She expected a fight, expected yelling, expected Caroline to break. Instead, she was standing there, calm as ever. Someone near the register spoke up. A man, mid-50s, gray hair, arms crossed. His voice cut through the air. "This ain't the place for this, lady." The woman's head snapped toward him. "Stay out of this," she snapped, her face flushed red. But the energy had shifted. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reacting. A woman near the fruit aisle whispered to her husband, "This is insane. She's just shopping." A younger guy, mid-20s, wearing a shirt that clearly suggested he wasn't a fan of Caroline's politics, shook his head and muttered, "This is too much." It wasn't just about Caroline and this woman anymore. The entire store was starting to take sides. But no one expected what happened next. The store was no longer just a shopping center. It had become a stage. Every aisle, every checkout line, every person frozen in place was now part of something bigger. The tension hung so thick that even the soft hum of the refrigerator seemed to disappear. The woman, still seething, looked like she was seconds away from snapping. But Caroline, she remained still, not passive, not intimidated, just in control. "I get it," Caroline said, her voice calm but firm. "You don't like me. You don't like what I stand for. But you're not going to intimidate me." The woman let out a bitter laugh, loud, sharp. "Intimidate you? Oh, please," she scoffed, shaking her head. "You think you're some kind of victim here, after all the harm you and your kind have caused?" Her voice cracked. It wasn't just anger anymore. There was something deeper beneath it, and Caroline saw it. This woman wasn't just angry at her. She was hurting. Something in her life, something beyond politics, had festered into this moment. Caroline could have fought back, could have embarrassed her, could have torn her apart with words that would have sent social media into a frenzy. She had the platform, the experience, the skill. But she didn't. Instead, she tilted her head slightly and asked, genuinely asked, "What are you really mad about?" The woman flinched. For a second, just a second, she looked off balance. Like no one had ever asked her that before. Like no one had ever really seen her. Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked. Her hands, which had been balled into fists, loosened just a little. The store was silent. Even the cashiers had stopped working. The only sound was the low hum of the overhead lights and the distant beep of a register that someone had forgotten to mute. Caroline took a step forward. Not in aggression, not in defense, just in understanding. "I mean it," she said, softer this time. "I don't think this is about me." The woman's breath hitched. For a moment, it looked like she might crumble, like whatever was buried beneath her rage was about to come pouring out right there in the middle of the frozen food section. But then she stiffened. Her face hardened. Her anger snapped back into place like armor. She wasn't ready. "You don't get to turn this on me," she spat. Caroline didn't react, didn't push, didn't argue, just let the moment sit. And for the first time, the crowd shifted. The same people who had been waiting for a spectacle now saw something else. They saw a woman unraveling. They saw Caroline standing in front of her, not as a politician, not as a talking head, but as a person. The guy with the phone, who had been recording since the beginning, slowly lowered it. The older man near the registers, the one who had spoken up before, muttered under his breath, "Huh." Even the young woman near the bakery, the one who had whispered, "Oh, this is bad," now looked like she wasn't so sure anymore. The shift was subtle, but it was happening. The woman must have felt it too, because her anger turned to embarrassment. Her eyes darted around, scanning the crowd that had only moments ago felt like her audience. Now they weren't so sure, and neither was she. But before she could decide what to do next, someone else stepped in. A voice cut through the heavy silence. "That's enough." It wasn't security. It wasn't a store manager. It was a customer. A man in his late 40s standing near the checkout lines, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't dressed to impress. Faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, scuffed sneakers. Just a regular guy. Someone who, up until this moment, had been just another bystander. But now he had decided to step forward. The woman spun toward him, her face still flushed, still defensive. "Excuse me," she snapped. He didn't flinch. "I said, that's enough." His voice was even, firm, not angry, just done. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded, others exchanged quick glances, as if silently agreeing, but hesitant to get involved. The woman's hands clenched at her sides. She was losing the room. "This isn't your business," she shot back, her voice cracking just slightly. The man shrugged. "Actually, it is," he said. "I was just trying to check out and leave. But now I gotta stand here and watch you scream at a woman buying groceries?" "Yeah, I'd say that makes it my business." A small ripple of agreement followed. The young woman from earlier, the one near the bakery, spoke up next. "She hasn't even raised her voice at you," she pointed out, looking at Caroline. "She's just standing there. And you're the one yelling." The woman's lips parted slightly like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out. A teenage boy near the self-checkout let out a low, awkward whistle. Not loud enough to be obnoxious, just enough to signal what everyone was starting to realize. This wasn't going the way she thought it would. Caroline hadn't fought back. She hadn't taken the bait. She had let the moment reveal itself, and now the woman was standing in the wreckage of her own making. The power dynamic had shifted. Her confidence wasn't there anymore. Instead, uncertainty flickered in her expression. She looked at the man, the young woman, the growing number of people whose faces no longer looked entertained or sympathetic, just tired of the scene. For the first time since this started, she hesitated. Caroline could see it in her posture. The way she shifted from foot to foot, the way her eyes flickered toward the exit, like she was debating whether to just walk away. But before she could make that decision, another voice cut in. This time, it was security. A middle-aged store employee in a red vest approached, followed by a uniformed security guard. "Ma'am, we need to ask you to leave," the security guard said, his voice neutral but firm. Not a suggestion, a decision. The woman's head snapped toward him, her face twisting. "I'm the one being removed?" she asked, her voice an octave higher than before. "She's the one?" She stopped because no one was backing her up anymore. The man near checkout, arms still crossed. The young woman staring at her with disbelief. The others silent. Even the guy who'd been recording from the start, his phone was now at his side. It hit her all at once. This was over. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands fell to her sides. The fight had drained out of her. Without another word, she turned, grabbed her cart, and pushed it toward the exit. No grand exit speech. No final attempt to save face. Just a quiet shuffle of footsteps as she left. Security followed, making sure she didn't cause another scene. And just like that, the tension shattered. People let out the breath they'd been holding. Conversation started up again. The store returned to normal. But not completely, because something had shifted. And Caroline, she had earned the respect of more people in that store than she ever could have with a speech. But what happened next surprised even her. The automatic doors slid shut behind the woman, and just like that, it was over. Or at least, it should have been. Caroline exhaled, rolling her shoulders as if shaking off the weight of the moment. She hadn't asked for this confrontation. She hadn't expected to become the center of attention on a random afternoon grocery run. But that's exactly what had happened. And now the store was watching her. People who had stayed silent during the ordeal were suddenly not so quiet anymore. "That was something else," the man from checkout said, shaking his head. "You handled that real well." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the store. A woman in her 60s wearing a floral blouse stepped closer, adjusting her glasses. "You know," she said, "I don't always agree with your politics, but I respect the way you handled yourself today. A lot of people would have lost their temper." Caroline offered a polite smile. "I appreciate that." And then something unexpected. A younger guy, maybe mid-20s, approached. His shirt made it clear that he leaned in the opposite direction politically. The kind of person who probably would have argued with Caroline online, maybe even criticized her in a comment section. But now he looked conflicted. "I was kind of waiting for you to blow up," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. Not gonna lie, I thought this was about to be one of those viral political meltdown videos. Caroline raised a brow. And? He let out a breath, shaking his head. And? I don't know. You didn't feed into it. You didn't make it worse. That was surprising. It wasn't a full admission, not quite a moment of complete agreement, but it was something. And in today's world, something like that mattered. As Caroline turned back to her cart, a soft voice caught her attention. I'm sorry about that, the young woman from the bakery section said, stepping forward. Caroline frowned. Sorry? You didn't do anything. The woman bit her lip, hesitating. I know, she said, but I didn't say anything either. Not when it started. Not when she got in your face. I just stood there. Her voice was thick with guilt. I didn't want to get involved, but now I feel like I should have. Caroline studied her for a moment, then simply nodded. I get it, she said. It's not easy to step in, but you spoke up when it mattered. The young woman gave a small, grateful smile, and then the unexpected happened. An older man who had been leaning against his cart near the self-checkout started clapping. Just once, then twice, slow, deliberate. At first it felt like an awkward, out-of-place gesture, but then others joined in. A woman near the registers, a cashier behind the counter, a man in the back of the store who had been watching since the beginning. It wasn't a loud, dramatic applause, not some grand, performative standing ovation. It was just a quiet, honest recognition, a moment of acknowledgement. Caroline felt her throat tighten, not with sadness, not with frustration, but with something else entirely. Gratitude, not for the applause, not for the attention, but for the simple fact that, even in a world so divided, moments like this could still happen. As she pushed her cart toward checkout, the weight of what had just happened settled in. This wasn't just about politics. This was about something bigger, and it wasn't over yet. As Caroline placed her groceries on the conveyor belt, she could feel the lingering energy in the store. People were still processing what had just happened. Some whispered to each other, others cast quick glances in her direction, and a few offered small, approving nods. The woman at the register, a young cashier with a name tag that read Sophia, scanned her items in silence for a moment before speaking. I saw everything, she said quietly. Caroline met her eyes. Sophia hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening too closely. Then she leaned in just slightly. People don't talk to each other anymore, she said. They just fight, scream. You could have done the same, but you didn't. That was different. Caroline offered a small smile. I just didn't see the point in adding more fire to an already burning building. Sophia's lips pressed together. She got it. The receipt printed, and as Caroline reached for it, Sophia spoke again, this time louder. You changed at least one mind today, she said, offering a small, knowing nod. Caroline paused for a moment, then took the receipt with a quiet, thank you. But as she turned to leave, she caught something out of the corner of her eye. The same young guy from earlier, the one who admitted he had expected a meltdown. He was standing near the exit, watching her. And then before she could step outside, he called out, Hey, Caroline. She turned. He hesitated, then shrugged. I still don't agree with you, he said. Caroline smirked. I didn't think you would after 20 minutes in a grocery store. He chuckled, scratching the back of his head. But I respect you, he admitted. Didn't expect that today either. For the first time since the confrontation began, Caroline truly smiled. Because that was worth more than any debate, any argument, any viral moment. That was real. She pushed her cart outside, feeling the weight of the day settle into her chest. Not as a burden, but as a reminder. This wasn't just about politics. It never really was. People were hurting, people were angry, and in a world that constantly encouraged division, sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to play the game. Because when you met fire with fire, all you got was ash. But when you met it with something different, with calm, with patience, with understanding, even when it wasn't deserved, that's when you built something real, something lasting, something that might just change a mind, even if it's just one. And maybe that's enough. If you made it to the end of this story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone completely shifted the energy of a situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and make us think. I'll see you in the next one.